10.
It is. Hey, everybody.
Hello, everyone. Hey, my name is
Hello.
Keith Aiken. I'm the co-editor of Sci-Fi Japan. Happy to be here with Kaiju Masterclass. We're going to be talking about the early production of the Unmade Godzilla 1994 film that Jan DeBont was going to direct. So let me introduce Carlos Huante
Hello.
and Ricardo Delgado.
Hey, everybody.
These are two incredibly talented, I guess you would say concept artists, storyboard artists.
Sure. All that.
Who have worked on a ton of films, animation, comic books. So let's start off, Ricardo.
Yes.
So how did you first hear about this project?
Well, that's a good question, because I heard about this story in the early days of my career, the way that a lot of us illustrators would hear about projects, and that was through the Hollywood Reporter. So I was working on Apollo 13 at the time, and I forget whether it was Tuesday or Friday, they would have listings of all the pictures that were in development. And so I would buy the Reporter and Variety on those days, sort of to scout up the new job and see the new jobs and see what was coming up that I could, apply for. And that back then, pre-internet days, you would like fax resumes and stuff like that, right? So I had a resume and I had some samples that I would fax out to different productions, and most of the times I'd get ignored, deservedly so probably, and sometimes I'd get a hit. So I saw an article on the front page of Variety saying, Jan DeBont, who had just directed Speed, which is, an impressive picture. Even today, it's an impressive picture. Yeah. And he was a DP in a bunch of 80s action films that I really respected, and that he was going to direct Godzilla. And so I knew enough by looking at the listing in the Reporter to hunt down, even though it was a Sony film, that Jan had offices at 20th Century Fox. So I was really brazen and emboldened back then. I was not afraid to cold call anybody. So I actually dialed the 20th Century Fox lot. I got through to the operator and said, "Hey, Jan DeBont's office, please." And they put me through. So they put me through, and I said, "Hey, my name is Ricardo. I do this dinosaur comic called Age of Reptiles. If you need any concept artists, I'd like to fax over my resume." And the assistant said, "Sure, here's a fax number." Because back then you can give out a fax number. It's not like an email today that's a little bit more private, right? So I faxed over some stuff like right away, like as soon as I got home from essentially my day job on Apollo 13. Again, I had no shame back then, and even today I have no shame. But
you got to
do what you got to do, brother. And so I faxed over some samples, some dinosaur drawings, and I got a call the next week from Jan's assistant, a guy named Glenn Saloom. I don't know why I can remember that, but I can't remember most of the things in my daily life today, but I remember Glenn's name. And so Glenn was like, "Yeah, Ricardo, Jan would like to meet you." And so he said, "Can you come by like this week?" So I said, No. Fiendishly, I thought if I have the weekend, I could come up with a few concept pieces, on my own time, and I could show them to Jan that next week. And so I said, "Can we do it on Tuesday or Wednesday?" And I was thinking, okay, I could take like a really long lunch during Apollo 13. I was working on the Universal lot on Apollo, and I could drive down to the 20th Century Fox lot. That's back when you couldn't call somebody on the cell phone and check where they were for lunch, right?
Yeah.
And so then I stayed up that late that weekend, and I came up with that mediocre excursion of a drawing.
Okay, and this was one of the ones you did for that, huh?
Yeah, and there's another one that, thank God, is still unpublished and will never be published as far as I can help it. And I just came in, like a pretty ballsy teenager, and just kind of said, "Hey, Jan, like this is what I think. I can help you out. I'd be happy to work on this." And Jan is kind of a stoic dude. Don't play poker with that guy. And he just, "Oh, yes, okay, well, we will talk in a few weeks." And I said, okay, thanks. So I just went back to my day job, and a few weeks later, I got a call. So that's my short but really long story of how I got into the show.
Carlos, were you a similar situation?
Not as professional as Ricardo there. I simply just got a call, and they were. I remember. I'm remembering everything that Ricardo was talking about. His reporter studies that he would do, and all that. And I was naive to all of that. So I actually was working on Batman at the time, and I was just finishing up. And I don't Batman Forever, one of those. And I was finishing up, and then I got a call, and it was from Dave Lowry. Actually, he told me, "Hey, they're doing, Godzilla, dude. You need to be on that." I'm like, "All right, well, set me up. I don't know who to talk to," and he did. And so that was that. It's that simple. And I went in, and they hired me, so that was good.
When I interviewed you guys, both you guys, years ago for the Sci-Fi Japan piece, I remember Ricardo saying that Carlos was already there, right? When you got hired,
Yes, he was there that first day, and I think we spent the greater part of that summer drawing monsters, ordering Thai food from Natalie Thai right around the corner from the studio.
You remember that?
Dude, well, I remember lunch. I don't remember what I drew, but I remember lunch, my brother.
So funny.
Right? So we would order from Natalie Thai about 10 minutes before noon. We'd drive over there, we'd get our food, we'd drive back together, we'd scarf down our food, and then about 20 minutes after 1, we'd start drawing or sculpting all over again. And it was honestly one of the most awesome jobs I've ever had, not just because of the subject matter, but because we think so much alike, and it was an opportunity for both of us to talk about those monster movies of our childhood, man. Especially like we were both obsessed with. Even today with War of the Gargantuous, right? Like we just discussed that film and tore it apart, in the best possible critique way, right? And that just kind of gave us even more impetus to realize that we were working on a dream job, and it goes for me unspoken to say that we were given our individual tasks, but if the situations were changed and Carlos were doing Godzilla and I was doing the Gryphon, I think that it's a tribute to Carlos as a designer that his Godzilla would have been magnificent as well. So it's but regardless of that, it was a lot of fun, a lot of goofing off. We can say goofing off 20 years later or whatever that was, but it was truly a pleasure and one of the memories I'll carry with me for the rest of my life.
You drove Nemec crazy.
Yeah, that's okay.
I guess we should mention that too. Here's one of the early pieces. This is something, Ricardo, you did that still while you're kind of figuring out the design.
Yes. I mean, that was all, really early on. And I think, to be honest, now all these years later, I could say it. Like I based a lot of my early designs on the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, right? Like, again, and sitting there with Carlos in that, it was just him and I in that art department room at first. We talked about like the history of kaiju, the history of monsters, if you will. And we had talked about how in our opinions, and I'll say specifically in my opinion, the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms really influenced, Gojira, and oh my God, that's horrible. Don't look at that, everybody. And so those early designs were textured like that, right? Like I remembered Carlos talked to me about sculpting rakes and how a lot of those early Gojira suits kind of had like the texture of a sculpting rake over the body, right? At least over the torso. And so some of these early designs kind of, I thought of perhaps putting like Harryhausen's sort of Rhedosaur body sculpture on the stomach and differentiating the texture like that. And, for me, it kind of looked a lot more like Godzilla. And in the end, I just kind of went with the silhouette, like the silhouette. The silhouette just had to look like what came out of the water, in 1954, and then the rest, like if it doesn't have pointy ears, it's not Batman, right? Like that kind of stuff just has to sort of feel an iconic part of the design. And so I began to vary my textures as I went along, and I think that really helped the process.
So you mentioned, I think it was Carlos that name dropped Nemec earlier. So I guess we should mention Joseph Nemec was the production designer on this project. And Ricardo, you had told me before that it was Joseph that kind of steered you more towards a classic Godzilla design and away from the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms.
I mean, Joe had a good eye. I think that again, all these years later, Joe's a really straight shooter, and I'll speak for myself. I'm pretty much a goofball, and I'm a hardcore monster lover, and I think that Joe was really patient with the both of us back then, and he just kind of said, "Hey, maybe you should do this, or maybe you should do that," and even as he said, "Hey, you should look more like the classic Godzilla," I still was, I use the word resistant enough to think that like poses like this should have been dynamic, right? Like you had to believe that the creature could kind of move around and move around the city. And one of the big notes from Jan was this video from the Rolling Stones that was really
right.
Remember that, Carlos?
Yeah, totally.
Picture directed.
Like, it was. He had seen that video. I forget what the song was, but he had seen that, and he said, "Oh, you should look at that video. It's very cool. We'll base our film more or less on that." And so then I said, "Well, how can we make these dynamic creatures kind of run around and move, in that environment, given the aesthetic of that Stones video, right?" And I think that Digital Domain had done that video. Carlos, correct me if I'm wrong, man.
I don't know.
And so there was that whole synergy, that dynamic between Digital Domain and what we were doing, and kind of what Stan Winston's shop had been doing before that.
Right.
And so there was a kind of a healthy, fertile ground of development between all of us. But Carlos and I had the advantage that we were in one room, Nemec was right next to us, and DeBont was right around the corner. Right. So we inherently we were just closer to Jan, and so Jan would kind of wander by every other day. Nemec would come by like twice a day. He was kind of like that, but
keeping an eye on things.
Keeping an eye on us, and making sure we weren't taking the long lunches we were taking anyway. So half the time he'd walk in and we'd be chomping down on pad thai anyway. So it was all good. So I don't even know what the question was, but there's.
I think you answered it quite well. Real quick, can we go to slide 18? See if we can get that. Going to drive the PowerPoint guys crazy.
Oh my God!
Dear Lord.
Carlos, getting hired first on this project. How did you get assigned the Gryphon and the Probats? How was that divided between you and Ricardo?
I don't know. That's what just I was. That's just what I was told to do. Okay. So I had to really. The idea for the Gryphon kind of evolved once I sorted out what the Probats were. The Probats were first, and then I hit the Gryphon. The Gryphon was kind of a problem that. Because with the wingspan and you have this giant creature, you have to involve the camp of the property. You can't get too naturalistic with any of these ideas. If you do, none of it works, right? So there's going to be some of the giant monster magic that has to exist for these, in your mind, for these characters to actually work at all. So, look at how small those wings are. There's no way that'll lift that thing up off the ground, right? It's ridiculous. But
yet those textures are amazing, my friend. They are amazing.
Yeah, these are beautiful. Both your work is just amazing. Can we go to the next slide? I know designs are not consistent. Obviously, these are you working out different concepts for the creature.
Yeah, and this one is ridiculous to me. But the idea was still it's a giant monster, right? And this is when I was starting to figure that I think I did this one first, and then I threw it on the ground as a quadruped. Because I figured it wasn't going to work as a stand-up character, and it needed to be more awkward standing up. But with its wings open, it would be the way that I had, And they wanted snakes coming out of the mouth, which, I didn't know what to do with, And then this is a drawing that I did I didn't know what to do with those things, and I just left it there.
Yeah, say real quick. We should say for people who aren't familiar with this project that this creature was an alien creation that basically kind of combined the attributes of a lot of different Earth animals. So it had like mountain lion and bat and cougar. Well, I said there and snakes and things like that. So it's this kind of conglomeration. So you're kind of having to try to fit all this stuff into an odd new design, I guess. So
yeah, it was the melding of all the probats. The probats were the ones who were gathering all that information.
Okay, we can hold on that slide for a little bit. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, Carlos.
The probats were actually out there grabbing all this information, and they were absorbing all that. They would absorb animals, and they were becoming giants. They started off as these small little things, and by the time just before they all melded together, they were like maybe 8 feet wingspan. There were these giant turkey vulture looking bats, and they would all gather together in this cave. And at a certain point, they actually all just started to meld together, in this magic moment, of science fiction magic. And they'd meld together and they became this thing. So the griffin would have, which is not, obviously not a griffin. I don't know why they called it a griffin, but it's a griffin. Would be this, creature made up of all the things that the probats had gathered. And like I said, I mean, with its wingspan, it would be 3-4 times the size of Godzilla,
right.
with its wings open.
Right.
It was a monster. So, it could fly with Godzilla carrying him, like if it was a baby, an eagle carrying a baby goat, kind of a thing. So.
Well, with Godzilla being kind of the hero of the story and the Griffin the villain, you obviously want like a very impressive, overwhelming, presence.
He had to be a threat, it was, like Ricardo was saying, it was a lot of fun sitting there drawing and sculpting. We had Jim Cameron would go up on the weekends when we weren't there.
Dude, that's right.
Yeah, he'd walk by,
Really?
and he was, he was liking what he was seeing. It was a fun time, man, working on all this stuff.
It was a fun time, and I think that Carlos' solution was really magnificent. In the sense that he took, when you as a creature designer read in the script, he's got snakes for tongues. You right away you go, well, what am I supposed to do with that? And you take that and you see what Carlos did with it, and it's just incredible, and a worthy foe for the big G at that stage. And I will say that I forget where I heard this and under the realm of gossip, but my understanding was that Sony as a studio thought that they had licensed all the Toho monsters for this film, right? But then what I mean by that is Ghidorah, Mothra, Rodan, and the rest of them, right? But then Toho said, no, it's just the big G, dude. So then at that point is when the Griffin was created specifically for the story. And again, what a solution to this. So.
Yeah, and I think that they were even being restrictive with the design of Godzilla, where we couldn't escape the classic structure or what Godzilla was. So when they did the American one later, you know what I mean, with the Roland Emmerich one, when we saw that, I remember thinking, it's like, wow, I think they finally let them go. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because they went completely away from Godzilla.
They went completely away. They
sure Godzilla, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, right there with you, dude.
They went all the way out. So
it's funny, Carlos, when you mention right now the ability of the Griffin to lift Godzilla off the ground and fly away. When I was watching Godzilla King of the Monsters a few years ago, that's exactly what I thought at the end of the movie, right? Like it's so interesting to see, the stuff that we thought about. Like I remember sculpting the maquette of Godzilla, and then when I saw the shot in the first Godzilla movie, the reboot of him walking away at the end of the movie. I go, oh my God, that's the silhouette. It's a similar shape, and I'm not inferring that anything was ripped off, but there was just so many convergent ideas or parallel ideas that went from those projects, So
I mean, those monsters that were fighting him looked very similar to the probats in a way. You know what I mean?
Right.
The idea, and it doesn't mean anything like you're saying. It just means that there was a crossover
That's right.
ideas. You know what I mean? And
I think as an artist too, you're imagining how these characters will be realized in computer graphics for the first time.
And and also to be clear and to further plug my friend Carlos, he had a significant hand in two of those pictures. Like he worked on Kong Skull Island and King of the Monsters, and I've seen some of his designs on Instagram, and they're magnificent. And if you haven't hunted them down, man, you guys all need to check that out because they're incredible work.
No, I tried on that Godzilla King of Monsters, but the Skull Island I had put a lot more time into. That was my project.
I could tell, dude. I could tell when you see him move, you see him walk, the way he carried. Like, look at that drawing of the Gryphon, everybody. Like those are Carlos Huante fists and forearms right there. You can't. They are inescapable. My friend. And so when Kong sort of turned and sort of walked away with his legs, his thighs thrashing through the water, like that's Carlos right there, man. You can't avoid. Even like the buffalo, man. When it kind of comes out of the water, dude. There's just a lot of you there. I can totally see that.
Well, there was a lot of cool drawings that came from MPC over in London and ideas that they did. And I was strictly on Kong, and I had a crew of 2 guys working with me that I hired to work with me, and that was Simon Lee and Paul Komoda.
Oh wow!
And both of whose I adore both their work. Yeah, and Gio Knockpill, who sculpted my Kong as a maquette, a CG maquette. Wow. So I had the crew. You know what I mean? I called them my Asian crew because they were phenomenal. I love them all. So they were just they did phenomenal work. I love those guys. So.
Well, I mean that paid off, and I believe that picture was nominated for a visual effects Oscar. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm always excluded from all that stuff, so I don't care.
And I hear you. But just kind of going back to G94 or 96 or whatever it was. Back to Carlos's point about the specific design points of Godzilla. Like I was given a list that I threw away because like back then when I left the job, I threw away like 90% of my paperwork. I think everyone else was more grown up and kept their stuff, but not me. I tossed all my stuff, but I was given a list of like Godzilla has 4 toes, 4 hands. Like it was very, very specific, and I had to adhere to that. And it was explained to me. I think it was Nemec that told me like this is from Toho. Like Toho says, in order for you guys to represent Gojira in this picture, it's got to have this stuff. And so I was, sort of adhered to in terms of what I could. I'm not going to say limited, but I was told like that's the specific list. One of the things, Keith, that you had mentioned to me a few minutes ago before we started was like, what would you do differently today? If you were to do this. Yeah, I think I would want to do differently today is sort of to go back and forth with Carlos. And like some weeks, I would do Gryphon stuff and he would do Gojira stuff, and back and forth, and like that way, the designs would reflect both of our aesthetics. And so there's like a healthy interchange of ideas. Not to say that I'm not, proud of the stuff that I'm proud of, and not to say that I'm not cringing at the stuff that I'm not proud of from that show. But I think that's one of the things I would love to have explored. That's what I would want to re-explore, is like that free-flowing sort of stuff that maybe was part of, Skull Island, perhaps, Carlos, that worked really well. So
the thing when you can get artists in, you can blend your talents and kind of like start picking like the best of each, what you each bring to the table and seeing what you can create that way. I can see how you'd want to approach it like that. Could you tell me like now when you're doing these kind of concept designs, is everything being done on computer? Are you still doing pen and ink, pencils? How is it? What's the difference now as opposed to what you were doing back then?
Go ahead, Carlos. I'll let you go first on that. I talked too much.
Well, no. I mean, this is your segment. I mean, it's all on Godzilla. So.
Yeah, no worries. Today I work both for my comic book stuff. My Age of Reptiles comics, I work traditionally, and I do pen and ink stuff, but I do color it through Photoshop. And for my concept stuff during the week, I do work specifically digitally now in Photoshop, and yet I do have concept stuff for a personal project that I have. I have a Dracula novel that's going to be published imminently, and all that stuff is all. It's a novel it's a prose novel with a bunch of concept art in there, a bunch of creature concept art. That's all digital stuff as well. Just yeah, I kind of feel like a free flowing sense of what is needed for each individual project, if not drawing. One of the things I love about seeing Carlos's stuff is that he is a traditionalist, and yet he's ballsy enough to go in there digitally and manipulate stuff as it's needed. And it's a tremendous thing. If you've ever seen Carlos draw live, again, go to his Instagram account. There's just some amazing stuff there.
Look for that,
yeah.
But Carlos, how are you doing? So is it still fairly traditional? Are you doing digital? How's it?
I stay traditional as much as possible. It's kind of a rebellion against the digital world now. It's kind of a thing for me now. It's become a thing where I want to keep the person of, bring the person into the artwork, which digital kind of removes you from that a little bit, because you can get really perfect with all your shapes and correct a lot of stuff very easily. The paper is not as forgiving as the digital screen is, so you're limited. I like the limitations, and it is what it is, and you are only as good as that version of that drawing is, which means that you have to step up and stay good, right? You can't get slack, about your skills. But I mean, digital is a great tool, and like Ricardo was saying, Ricardo tends to be able to keep his style, when he goes digital, which is not easy because the tool doesn't lend itself that way,
Right.
It actually makes you want to get really photographic. And and that's the thing is that, to retain your style when you go digital, right, is big balls. You know what I mean? You have to have a lot of in you to stay with you, right? Rather than letting the temptation, it's like the devil in the tool is that it tempts you to want to take it further. But to stay within the arc of what is you, stay here, right? That takes a lot of venom to do that. And returning the compliment back to Ricardo is that he stays there too. You know what I mean?
Well, thank you, my friend. And I think what Carlos is, to further Carlos's comments, is sometimes the stylist wants to tell you how to do the drawing, right? The Photoshop brush is saying, no, you're not going to do this. You're gonna do what I tell you. And so a lot of times with some of my my Dracula stuff as well, I'll do like a little doodle, right? And that's my way of saying no. Like even if it's like 1 inch by 2 inches, it's like no. This is kind of what I want to do. So I'll snap a picture of that. So I'm in essence making the technology work for me, right? And so then when I take that little doodle and I drop it into Photoshop, it retains the energy of what I want to do, So if I want to do like a short face werewolf, but retain the textures of a real wolf, but yet still have that shorter snout than it would have in real life, and that's kind of what I'm doing with my Dracula stuff these days. Like you still, to again further Carlos's point, you retain sort of control over the texture and the tool, and not let it sort of dictate what you as an artist are doing. I know that we're getting highfalutin here, but I think it's also important for young people to understand that you must retain the essence of you and what you're doing and express that, and I think that on this show, on the Godzilla show, I think that we expressed all that like really, really, really clearly, very early on. And I think that was one of our strengths back then.
Well, we were able to because it was an analog show, you know what I mean, back then.
Right.
You know what I mean? And we had and we were able to we had our language already created, you know what I mean, with our hand. We knew the arcs that are aligned. And which is really important when you go to digital. That's why I always say I stay analog as much as possible, because I don't want to forget. You know what I mean? I don't want to forget myself. I need to stay there. I mean, there was, for example, and I know you guys like to go on. with this. But I just learned how to do a project by sketching in a sketchbook. I've hated sketchbooks my entire life because I found them too restricting. Mm-hmm. And I finally learned how to do it when I worked on the movie It, and I filled the entire moleskin sketchbook with the drawings. That's it. I didn't draw outside of there, maybe a couple of drawings at the very beginning, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to try this out, and I did, and it was phenomenal. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had drawing for a professional gig, right? So, but I had to draw on a different kind of paper with a different tool too, and I had to, and I was really, it was really interesting because that pencil, that type of pencil, was actually making me draw a different way, and
right.
So it was interesting for me, you know what I mean? And it was very, very exciting. You get filled with joy, you know what I mean? Because you're discovering another aspect of yourself that you may have kind of flirted with before, right? And now all of a sudden you're doing this full time and you're like, wow, look at this. How far can I take it? And you don't get that experience with digital because it's a program, which that word already tells you it's program. You know what it's going to do already, but because there's no mistakes, right? This, you're making mistakes and you can't fix it because the paper will not forgive you, right? You have to go with it. So, like this stuff that I was doing in Godzilla, this is when my period when I was working with only wax pencils, right?
I remember that. I remember that.
And I love drawing that way because it actually makes me think very simply. You know what I mean? I'm thinking only of simple primary shapes. And I just get into starting to break stuff up and divide all the forms down. But I can't get that far into it because of the lead is the way that it hits the paper is very thick, right? It doesn't allow for a really pointed kind of pencil will break if you get it too thin, So it's broad stroking, you know what I mean? So yeah. Anyway.
And the other piece of it is the texture of the paper that you were drawing on, right?
Yeah, and flick.
And again, we're creating a big Scooby-Doo sandwich here of monster talk, but I'll add another slice of cheese and meat by saying that what Carlos is describing is a return to our childhood of sitting in the kitchen table and just drawing monsters. Like
right.
that's heaven for me. And for my Dracula stuff and for this stuff, there's a joy of drawing with, the pencil on textured paper and giving our ideas to the paper and to the shows, or in my case, my books, that brings a thrill out of me personally, because when I'm able to choose the paper that I work from, when I'm able to choose the pencil, or even change pencils within the same drawing, which I know blows the mind of a lot of young artists these days. Yes, you can actually change pencils in the middle of a drawing, or use 3 or 4 different pencils or tools, right? You can even remember the days, Carlos, where you could get a chamois and you could just go, halfway done, and you could just wipe a beautiful little stroke. And it just gives you that blend over the wing or the membrane or the eye, and it's so beautiful.
Do it. See,
it's
black from all the graphite.
There you go. There's and look at that. Like that's a prime example right then and there. So
I'd like to ask you about, because Carlos has some color pieces kind of like this. Obviously there's the ones that are done with pencil, but is this done? Is this also wax pencil or color pencil? How are you doing these?
This is all wax pencil, and what I would do then to dilute and to add kind of big graded areas is I would had the Pantone markers were the big thing back then, which in my opinion still are one of the best markers ever made.
Right? I agree. Yeah, I agree. I agree.
And they had a lot of really kind of probably very toxic, poisonous kind of like the blender, and then the effects, which honestly the effects little bottles that they made, I still want those.
Me too. I mean, all my hair fell out as a result, but regardless of that,
Yeah. So I would mix that on a cotton ball,
guilty,
and I'd wipe with alcohol, and it had to be a very low percentage of isopropyl, usually like maybe 70 or lower even, because if it went too high, it would just completely obliterate the drawing.
That's right.
And you would just erase and push the wax pencil around. It's a wax-based pencil, you know.
Mhm.
So it was one of the things that I learned from sculpting on that when I tried alcohol, because we would use alcohol to as a solvent, you know, and I'm drawing with the wax based pencil, and I thought, well, they're kind of, you know, they're both kind of, they have some of the same chemistry in them, and I wonder if the alcohol would work. And I remember at Dynamation trying it, and it worked. And then I met a friend of mine who was all about markers later, who really inspired me to do it. My friend Matt Codd, our friend Matt Codd, who was working strictly in markers, and he was using alcohol, and so it kind of confirmed my ideas that I had just from the chemistry of sculpting, realized that maybe this would affect, and that's what I used there. Long story to just tell you, yes, that's what I was doing.
It's such an interesting visual. So it's,
but then what you would have back then is what doesn't happen anymore, which are happy accidents, right?
Right.
You'd have like these sort of things that you didn't intend within a drawing or a design that just happened very naturalistically. And you know, for me, it was a surprise within a surprise within a surprise of the piece. Like today, with a lot of the digital stuff, you know, like look at that beautiful, you know, the violet mob stuff you have going on there with the foot of the griffin. I think that's incredible, you know, and that's all just like the happy accidents that you just go, yeah, you know, as you're sitting there chomping at the end of the marker, right, which is Kelly, which in my case, you know, murdered many brain cells during that decade. But
totally,
but it's like it's all, that's right, but it's all about like the happy accidents. It also retained our visual interest in the designs throughout. You know, one of the things that happens with digital is that you have the design and then you execute the design, and because you can hit the undo button, you can go back 10 strokes, you know, you know, it's forgiving, right? But when I ink a comic book page, it's funny, sometimes I screw up a line and I go, my fingers do the undo thing even as I'm inking on the page, which is ridiculous. That's such a scientific study right unto itself that I'm sitting there inking. I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have inked that. And my fingers do this, right? Yep. And then I go, oh no, that's
green.
This is I got to get the white out, you know, which is like so 1980s, if not 1990s, you know. So funny. It's so funny.
I've done the same thing,
right? Well, where it's like it's like a Pavlovian twitch, if you will, right? Where you're just like, oh yeah, no, I'm doing, but I'm actually inking a comic book page. And with it, when you do a comic book, a printed matter, and again, everyone, check out Carlos's printed stuff. You know, his books are just astonishing. You should look them up. But with the printing stuff, you can't write in the corner, oh, you know what, it's Tuesday, 11:30 at night, I'm really tired. Sorry about this, everybody. You know, you can't do that. You know, you can do that with storyboards or with concept art because that's not really the final thing. But what you're doing for a printed piece, whether it's a comic book, okay, well, that's horrific. Oh my God. It's not forgiving. Like, this is just production art. It just needs to sell the idea, right? Like, you're right. You know, I don't care that the helicopter and the horizon are having this horrible tangent traffic accident right in front of all of us. But for a printed piece, you can't fool around like that. It has to all sort of read in the best way possible. It's unforgiving is my point. So,
what I want to say real quick too is now that we're looking like this concept piece, is this project, I know Jan was signed in like July of '94 or something around there, and left the project around Christmas because there was a dispute about financial matters. There was also Jan had told me that there was a lot of creative clashes with the upper management at Sony about the approach to the film, and he just basically had enough. But during that time, both of you produced an amazing amount of work. I mean, so you know.
Well, again, it's a labor of love. Like I literally ran to work every day. You know, I drive down the 405 and I'd run to work because number one, I was working with a good friend, you know, and it's one thing when, you know, you're in an office full of other illustrators working on stuff, but uniquely, like we would just, again, we'd spend hours talking about The Creature from the Black Lagoon, you know, The Blob, you know, all these great monster movies that made us who we were then and who we are now, right? and I just I loved it. I know that for a fact. Moving into some anecdotes, I know they did physical tests about how to crush a house. I saw those tests, their videos, and I know that they built a full-scale set of a Japanese fishing village off the coast of Oregon.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, they spent like $2 million, and $2 million back then.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of money now, but they built that thing. It was for the opening sequence of the picture where Godzilla rises out of the film, which I believe was kind of mimicked in the Roland Emmerich film. A little bit, I think so. Yeah, if I remember correctly. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But they spent a lot of money on that film, and they decided that they spent so much money. And if they spent any more, they would have to commit to the rest of it. And that's kind of when the whole thing just kind of fell apart. So I do remember after that show, I was able to go back to storyboarding on Apollo. So,
yeah. I mean, it was a short window, but a lot was done. I mean, Jan hit the ground running. It was just, set developing and concept art and lining up the effects teams and, all this stuff. Real quick, if we could, can we go to slide 25?
That's a horrible sculpture. Oh, that's a beautiful sculpture.
What I would ask is, here's like another of the things that you guys had worked on, which was, maquettes. Had you guys both done sculpting before this? Was this like a...
No, well, I mean, it is something I do for my projects still to this day. This was done in a clay that I was not used to working in, which was very hard. And it was more difficult than it had to be. You know what I mean? And I would have gotten much further along had I hadn't tried to experiment. And then the wings were an issue too. I should have probably thrown it down on all fours. It would have been a better sculpture for sure. But
I remember that. I remember, Carlos, you had a heating lamp. You were heating the clay as you were sculpting it, right? Am I right about that?
No. Okay. Yeah, I mean, with any clay, you have to do that. I mean, you were working with like a number one,
Yeah, it's like
aroma.
clay,
it was
basically.
super soft. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Real quick, if you could cycle through the next few slides just slowly, that'd be great while we're talking.
This was the Gryphon. I left it as rough. In other words, did
Jan decide this was the design he wanted to use, or was this still you're still filling out the process of the character design?
I never got a definite answer on any of that. I just went with it, and he seemed to be okay in his kind of very, kind of tempered kind of reactions that he had. He was just kind of, Yeah,
again, Jan was a pretty good. If I would not want to play poker against Jan, like he was one cool customer. You know, like everything was just like yes, but very like neutrally yes. Like okay, it was more like an okay. I guess that's a better way of saying like, okay.
Kind of like
and again, not again, but we were working independent of Stan Winston's studio, right? Like Stan's shop was doing what they were doing, we were doing what they were doing. And I presume Digital Domain was also sort of working on whatever they were working on at that point. But, we had the geographical and tactical advantage that we were right around the corner, from them. Yeah. And it's my opinion as well that, as much as Joe Nemec was a guiding force hovering around us, making sure we didn't take too long during our Natalie Ty lunches. He was also championing our stuff to Jan. I remember distinctly one day, forgive me if I'm talking over Carlos' stuff real quick, but I remember one day, like, Joe, I was there drawing away and Joe walked in and he motioned Jan in and they looked at both of the designs and Jan was like, oh, do you like these? And Joe's like, yeah, like these are, I really like these. These are very, very strong. They're unique and they complement each other. Like, so Joe, we were more free spirited whereas Joe had to actually build a multi-million-dollar motion picture, right? So that allows us to sort of say, hey, yeah, we'll do whatever we want. And whereas he has to sort of lead an army of people, right, tactically, and I get that. But there was many times where he faithfully defended us, and I appreciate that to this day. And
he was definitely like the father in there.
Oh, yeah. Joe. So with Carlos, could you tell me how far along into the process, like how far is the sculpt along? Because you can see there's a lot of detail to it.
Well, there kind of was. I mean, it was. I would say this is maybe in the first third of first quarter of what the sculpture should have been. You know what I mean? Like I said, there were a lot of steps that were I knew I didn't have enough time to actually make it, but I just wanted to block it out really quick. And that's all this is. I just wanted to block it out so they could kind of get an idea in 3D of the way all of these volumes would work, right? I knew I was never going to get to finish it because it would have taken me, weeks to do that. So that's all this was. It was literally just to get the volumes down, let them see what the relationship between the wings and the body and all that in 3D. That's why I have one closed and one open, kind of a thing. That's what it was for. And
that's just blocking it out. That's impressive.
Well, no, I mean, again, like the lighting is terrible here, so you can't really see all the stuff that's actually on there. So, I mean, me looking at this, it's too anthropomorphic. I probably would have brought the shoulders down. Now this is just geek talk. I would have gotten rid of the clavicle, so the shoulders would have hung more like a chimp, and I would have brought it down to be a quadruped. So that way, when it stands up, it would have been a little bit more awkward, like a dog standing up.
Yeah.
Not as much as not that awkward, but something like that,
like a bear, maybe, or you get
something like that. Yeah, maybe like a bear. Sure. Yeah, something like that. Because a bear can stand up and it still looks like it can do it, but its chest is still pushed out. Something like that. Yeah, this is a little too anthropomorphic, and I probably would have done like a couple of these to sort that out. What the design would have looked like. But there you go.
I think that also we had a lot of executives coming through, to look at this stuff. Like we were in the new building at that point at Sony, and so we were in the executive offices. And Carlos, if you remember, I think Matt Codd was working on 12 Monkeys just down the hall.
Got to go and meet Terry Gilliam that time.
Yeah, so one day we're leaving, and then there's Terry Gilliam comes by, and we just run into him, right? It was so awesome, man. Just running into another one of our heroes is just fantastic. Yeah. But, because we were young designers at that point, and we were just we were focused so much on our design work that, at least for myself, I didn't understand how important financially this picture was to the studio. And so I was not cognizant like, wow, gee, like there's so many executives that come by here. I don't understand why would they be so curious about this some Godzilla design, but they were making heavy duty decisions and deciding whether we could afford this picture, whether they were going to make this picture. And so almost kind of on a daily basis, they were looking at our maquettes in progress. And I think that as I look at it now, Carlos's design was so bold, and it was a new one, right? And I think that they walked in, they looked at mine, and they go, well, there's Godzilla. Yep, that's Godzilla. And then it was really cool to see how excited they got about Carlos's Gryphon design. Like I think they showed, like they found all the suits just considered him just a very worthy villain and foil to the big G. So I
would always get to work late, so I would never hear any of this. Ricardo would actually always tell me what they said.
Yeah, no, that's right.
I was driving Joe Nemec insane. Okay.
Well, the big thing
is a very feral kind of minded artist. It's actually to this day, that's why it works. This whole pandemic thing has affected me Not at all. I'm still doing what I do. I work from home, have been working from home because it works better for me, because if I go into work, I have to all of a sudden kind of, learn how to behave like the rest of the humans. And I haven't done that in many, many, many years. So,
well, Carlos would roll in, and then we would just go to lunch. Remember that, too? We would go to lunch.
Yeah,
and then I would say, oh, who came by, so and so, and they all look at our stuff. And honestly, for me, it was just a sincere pleasure. When I was able to see the reaction of the execs, just because like those guys are pretty straightforward. Like bankers are taught to play poker, right? And they would walk in and they would go, wow, at the Gryphon like that, and they would always just sort of point at the musculature of the back of the shoulder and the arms, and they just found it to be just a really great result and solution, awesome. and so then we would just go to lunch and come back, and I would work till like 5 or 6, and then Carlos would just keep working, and stuff just got done. Like they could argue with our methods, but they couldn't argue with our results. I'll say that very proudly.
Yeah. Real quick, can we go slide 11? Look at some of Ricardo sculpting. So obviously this is an unfinished piece, but I like it quite a bit. And this is based, I guess, loosely around the idea where in the film Godzilla is captured and he's held in an aircraft carrier or aircraft hangar.
In the script he is rendered unconscious, and he's drugged on the Golden Gate Bridge, and then he's transported across the country by helicopters. But this is a neutral pose that I sculpted and started to sculpt so that it could be digitized and then translated. So I think I got about, I would say, less than halfway through before we were told that we were both done. And and this is just sort of my explanation as to what it would look like. And then, if anything, I'm proud of the tail. It represents my thought in terms of like, well, that's what it would be. That's the type of tail it would need to propel itself through the ocean.
Like an alligator.
It's very crocodilian. If I had to do it, one of the things again, if I were to do it over again, I would sculpt it to complement Carlos's piece. Like I think that it would have been a better selling tool to see them facing off, mouth open, and like Carlos's piece kind of twist to his character's right. Maybe I would twist my sculpture to the left. That way that you'd sort of see them complementing each other as a sculptural piece, but like that. I think I did that piece, and then Nemec and his crew built that. And one of the cool things, one of the lost sort of techniques of art departments of yesteryear are foam core models of sets. Like I miss that very much. Everything was to scale. Like those people there, that little truck there on the lower right, those to scale. Like it's so funny. It was always so funny to me to see, set designers, and set designers are architects, right? If nothing else, like they would bust out the scale and they would put it right there next to the truck, and they would figure everything out to the foot, if not the inches, and I was always appreciative of that. And so that's one of the models that they built to measure the scale of that dome based on my neutral pose maquette to have it scanned digitally into the digital domain process.
Can we go to real quick slide 12?
I forgot that things were already digital at that point.
Yeah, dude, it was post Jurassic Park, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
I've seen like things like the rough animatic of Godzilla climbing the Golden Gate that they had done, which is real basic computer animation. Just
I haven't seen that. I did a drawing of where he's knocked out, unconscious on the Golden Gate Bridge, and hopefully that will never see the light publicly. But nonetheless, it was an effective. Just kind of he's laying there, and I think those sketches sort of provided a lot of like, well, it's not going to look completely like that, but that's the story idea. And I think that was also a point of selling to the execs. Like, well, we've never seen Godzilla knocked out on a Golden Gate Bridge. We have since seen Godzilla plow through the Golden Gate Bridge,
Yeah.
different scale.
Yeah.
I mean,
yes. No, dude. Of course.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
It was a lot bigger. Yeah.
No. You to say the least. To say the least.
I mean, now they're like titans. You know?
Yeah. No. And you know, and I think that those are sort of beautiful solutions. You know, about 22 generations later, right?
Yeah.
And yet, you know, it just showed the power of a sketch to be able to convey an idea. And what was beautiful about what I think, if beautiful about what we did, if I could sort of take a step back, is that Carlos and I generated a lot of ideas really, really quickly, yet sort of coming to a solution really, really quickly as well. And being able to present that really, really quickly. Like they had our stuff pinned up all over the walls, you know, as we went along. And, you know, that was really cool. Like they would run blueprints of our stuff all the time and
Right.
take them to the exec meetings. Like they were really heavy duty selling the picture, you know, on our two characters. And, you know, I hadn't even thought of that until just now for such a long time, but it's true. It was all based on those two characters.
Well, it's probably better that we weren't concerned with any of the budgetary stuff, you know what I mean?
No kidding. Yeah.
I mean, because then you kind of start to get, you know, really bogged down by the care of all that, which I tend to ignore all of that. To this
that's
day,
not my problem. Yeah, that's not my problem.
Definitely my issue, one of my personal issues. But yeah, it's a good thing to ignore, you know, all that stuff so you can be free to be creative.
Yeah, I think you're worried about what everyone else is thinking or what the budgets are. Yeah, you're just going to stifle yourself. So it's,
I don't care.
Yeah, I don't. That's not my problem.
Real quick, we go to slide 10 and then 9. Going to do a little backwards here.
Oh, God.
Ricardo, I assume this is your sketch for the layout for the maquette, right?
Yeah, I'm going to cover the drawing as I talk about it because it's horrible. Yeah, I did not. No worries. No worries. Like I did that to then do the maquette. And well, like there it is. That's all I could say.
Well, I'm saying it shows the tail you're talking about because it was kind of obscured by the hanger in the models. So you can see kind of the crocodilian tail you're talking about. And then can we go to 9, please?
Oh,
here's like kind of a fun motion piece. I guess setting up naval battle. Is this?
Yeah. No, that was. I mean, that was just a concept sketch, and so that it was really cool for me to see, you know, this. I'm a big fan of this new Monsterverse. I really like those movies a lot, and so like there's that scene where Dr. Sekihara comes out on the deck of the battleship, and you see Godzilla coming at the yeah, that stuff is just really awesome, and it reminded me very selfishly of this drawing that we had never seen. You know, we had never seen that until that movie, and it egotistically, I remember sitting in the theater thinking, well, you know, Carlos and I thought of that stuff like 20 years before, you know.
You did, not me.
Well, thank you, my friend. But we were right there, dude. Like that again. That Ghidorah lifting the Godzilla up right away. I thought of your Gryphon, right? Like I
mean, everyone will come to that conclusion at some point. You know what I mean?
You know? And then like again, ideas flowing parallel, you know, and coming to their own independent concept. I get all that, but I was proud of this drawing, even as simplistically as it is, and I was proud and excited to see it realized in the film later on. I'm not saying they saw my drawing or anything like that, but you know, as Carlos was mentioning, you know, how could you not want to see a shot like this in a movie? You know, how could you not? Whether it was my design or anybody else's, it's a cool image, and I was just banging out the drawings like all morning. I just covered the walls.
Well, we're getting close to the hour, so I don't want to take up too much more of your time. So real quick, if we could go through slides like 13 through, hold on one sec, 13 through 17, show some of Ricardo's. These are your set designs or whatever, your concept art for just locations. And just want to say, real quick, thanks to both of you for sharing artwork with me years ago for the Sci-Fi Japan coverage. And Jan DeBont also shared a lot of these pieces in particular, and the maquette Jan gave me. So I really appreciate that, so we could share them here. Just showing the ice cave that Godzilla was emerging from.
Oh, yeah.
There's actually a great piece that Ricardo did that shows
cool.
the lair for I guess the den for the Gryphon, which I assume is probably one of the few times you actually drew the Gryphon, Ricardo.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was very cognizant of that was an important sequence, and at that point, you know, we had oh yeah, I remember that one as well. Good Lord, that's awful. And I was just drawing sets at that point, but I really wanted to respect all the work that Carlos had done up to that point on his character, and wanted whatever cocoon that I'd come up with to be worthy of his concept work.
I haven't seen these in so long, dude.
I know,
a lot
dude.
of these I don't remember.
Right? It's like Natalie Ty flashback, you know?
Yeah, Natalie Ty. Even the name is like, what? You know?
Right? I wonder if it's even still there. You know,
slide 17. If you showed that last one, let's see if we've got that. And before we cut out here, see if that's possible. If not, real quick, I don't know if you can really tell her. This is the Gryphon layer.
Oh yeah.
The center is kind of the Gryphon with its wings folded around its body, kind of in a like embryonic sac before it was born.
Wow, that's
cool.
the whole Dracula thing right there. You know, you can't escape it. Yeah. No, and it was just an amazing experience. And again, you know, I hope that whoever's listening or watching this can understand the importance of working with your friends. And I think that it remains one of the great experiences of my career, and certainly a pleasure in seeing my dear friend Carlos's work on this. And you know, he inspired me on a daily basis. Like, Carlos's work was here, and I felt like I had to just come as close to it, and it was all on a love and friendship and respect level. So, you know, thank you, Carlos. I appreciate it.
Same, dude. I really enjoyed myself back then. You know,
absolutely.
I'll say, just thank you so much for sharing with this. I really appreciate it. I just want to say, before we go, is there any current projects you guys want to talk about? Plug some stuff. You know, now's the time.
Carlos?
Ricardo.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, like I said, I have my Dracula from Transylvania novel, illustrated novel with tons of concept art that's going to be published within the next couple of months from Clover Press. I'm really proud of it. It's essentially my version of the Bram Stoker story. And, you know, at a certain point, I wanted to start representing my ideas for creatures in my own stories, and that is a result of that. So if you go to Amazon, it's under my name and Dracula of Transylvania, you'll find it. Please click on the pre-order and check it out.
I've seen some of the artwork for it. It's phenomenal.
Thank you,
Carlos.
Not be surprised.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's exciting to see. So
Hammer horror, Universal monsters, all that.
How about you, Carlos? What's going on these days?
You know, I have a number of projects that I'm working on. I just opened a Patreon page. Finally, I've been wanting to do that for a while. But as far as projects go, I have a book. I have several books that are in the make, but I'm not sure how I'm going to do them anymore. So I don't know what's going on as far as. I have nothing to say.
Can follow? I guess the Patreon. Say, do you have a site somewhere where people can follow? Is it the Patreon? Or
the Patreon page is under my name, you know, and Gallery Anatom, actually, which is also my Instagram page. But I'm kind of blending off of Instagram, leaving social media kind of a thing. So it'll start getting quiet in that world for me. I left Facebook many years ago. I'm leaving all that and going on to, I just like to draw, you know, and I don't want to be social in the world of social kind of stuff. You know, I'm kind of, you know, not that guy. So, you know, I'm putting it all on Patreon. And if I could find a way to make that work, I will lessen even my involvement, even in film projects, and be more selective, which is kind of where I want to go, you know, with that. I'm really interested in, I've written down a lot of vignettes of things that I want to do. And so I want to illustrate those, you know, and pull them out. I'm not a long form writer like Ricardo is, you know. I just like the way I talk in little bites, you know, and then I lose track, and then I talk in another bite, you know. So I write poetry. It's much easier for me to work in a lot of meaning in that little nut. And from that, I like to write, you know. kind of inspired by a lot of the stuff like Gustave Doré did back in the day, you know, and I want to do that. So I'm working on that right now. I have a book called Guerra that I actually put out a tease on my sites. That is, it's cool. I just haven't been able to put it together because I have some issues going on with the printer. So,
understood. I'll just say, everyone who's watching this, you know, please go check these guys' work out because it's amazing. You know, just
thank you. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and check out Carlos's amazing stuff on Instagram and Patreon.
Please do. I want to say real quick, thanks to Steve Rifle, everybody at Kaiju Masterclass for inviting us to do this.
Absolutely.
It was a lot of fun catching up with you guys again after all these years.
Yeah, I know. It's been so long.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to say also, please check out sci-fijapan.com, which is my site. Anyone who's interested in learning more about this movie and taking a closer look at the artwork, we did an article years ago called Godzilla Unmade. That's on the Sci-Fi Japan.
Oh, yeah.
You can see all this artwork. You can read the interviews I did with these guys. A lot of stuff in there. It's a very involved project.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to talk about that we really barely touched it.
Barely. We talk more about Natalie Ty than actually the project. So
Yeah.
I think we covered some good stuff. I mean,
okay.
It's great showing your work to the Maquettes. You know,
There's that Caribbean place, Carlos. Bamboo, right? Was it Bamboo? Remember the Caribbean place?
Dude,
No,
you're pulling stuff out.
Hey man, I know, but yeah, I remember the food more than the drawings. I don't know why. Like, there you go.
I ended up working on the Sony lot a few years later, so I remember Natalie Ty and a lot of those.
See, there you go. All right.
All that stuff in Culver City. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, totally.
Totally, man.
All right. Wait, thank you so much, guys. I'll let you go.
My pleasure.
We'll be in
You
touch.
guys be well.
Just to catch up again.